Hey everyone, and welcome back to Anytime Español.
Today, we're breaking down one small verb that does a lot of heavy lifting in Spanish, deber.
Most students think it only means should or must, and they usually get it confused with hay que and tener que, which also express obligation.
And while that usage of deber is important and needs to be used correctly, there are lots of other ways to use deber. So let's get into it and improve your Spanish.
First, don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you still haven't.
And check out the description of this video below for all of our links where you can either sign up for our memberships to receive exclusive Spanish content for members only, like PDF guides and extra video lessons, as well as our website where you can get yourself a free gift, and our link to buy me a coffee where you can donate directly to the channel to support our work. Okay, so first off, we learned that deber plus an infinitive shows obligation. Like Darcy said, this is when deber means either must or should, and this is the most common way to use deber.
When using it this way, deber expresses a moral obligation, a responsibility, or a recommendation.
Exactly, so we could say something like, you should study more.
Debes estudiar más.
So you see here that we recommend that someone should do something, and it has our structure of deber plus an infinitive. Debes, and then the infinitive, estudiar. Let's see another one. We must leave now.
Debemos irnos ahora.
She should call her mother.
Ella debe llamar a su mamá.
You should have told me before signing the contract.
Debiste decirme antes de firmar el contrato.
Okay, so that's easy enough. The only part that can get a little bit tricky is when we use deber like this in the past imperfect tense, the meaning can change from should or must to had to, like in this example. When we were kids, we had to help at home.
Cuando éramos niños, debíamos ayudar en casa.
Okay, so as we mentioned at the start, deber used in this way can be a little bit tricky when we're talking about obligation and when we should or must do something because there are other obligation expressions like hay que and tener que, but we'll get into those a little bit later on. For now, let's see our next meaning of deber.
Now, we can also use deber to mean to owe either money or something concrete. In this way, we have deber and then a noun.
So, for example, we could say something like, I owe you $20.
Te debo $20.
So you see we first have deber, debo, and then a noun, $20. She owes me an explanation.
Ella me debe una explicación.
So same thing here. We have debe and then a noun, an explanation. We owe them a favor.
Nosotros les debemos un favor.
The entrepreneurs owed the bank a lot of money.
Los emprendedores le debían mucho dinero al banco.
Next, deber can also be used to express probability or assumptions using the structure deber de and then an infinitive. When used this way, it expresses must be, should be, or is probably. So, for example, my husband must be tired.
Mi esposo debe de estar cansado.
So in this way, using debe de estar, we're expressing that he must be, it's likely that, or he's probably tired. Let's see another one. Your in-laws are probably arriving home soon.
Tus suegros deben de llegar pronto a casa.
So here we're assuming or it's probable that they'll arrive soon. Julia must have forgotten the appointment.
Julia debe de haber olvidado la cita.
The engineer should already have left.
El ingeniero debió de salir ya. Side note, in real-life conversations, many native Spanish speakers drop the de. So instead of hearing mi esposo debe de estar cansado, you might hear mi esposo debe estar cansado.
Next, we can also use deber in the conditional tense when we want to give advice or recommendations in a bit of a softer tone or in more of a polite way. So the structure will be like debería and then an infinitive of another verb. So, for example, you should see a doctor.
Deberías ver a un médico.
So here, by using deberías instead of debes, by using that conditional form, we're suggesting or recommending that someone do something, but just doing it a little bit softer, a little bit more polite. Let's see another. We should talk in order to plan the annual community event.
Deberíamos hablar para planear el evento anual de la comunidad.
Mom, you shouldn't eat so much sugar.
Mamá, no deberías comer tanta azúcar.
Maybe you should rest and finish tomorrow.
Quizá deberías descansar y terminar mañana.
So remember, in Spanish, using the conditional like this, debería, is really the safest way to give advice or tell someone what to do or request something from them. Because in Latin America, speakers don't often speak so bluntly or directly, especially when talking to someone in high esteem or like their boss or their parents. So it's really the safest option.
Okay, now let's look at the different ways we can show obligation in Spanish and clear up any misunderstandings.
When we want to express should, must, ought to, supposed to, or have to, we think of these expressions. But when do we really use each one? Let's look at the differences here.
We use tener que to express personal obligation.
That's when we want to say something like, I have to work tomorrow.
Tengo que trabajar mañana.
So this is something I can't get out of, it's not avoidable, it's something that I have to do. Whereas deber is used more for a recommendation or a responsibility, like you should work tomorrow.
Debes trabajar mañana.
So the key thing to remember between these two is that tener que seems unavoidable, whereas deber is used more as advice or a responsibility.
And hay que expresses a general obligation when there's no subject.
So what does Darcy mean by that, when there's no subject? Let's look at this example. If Darcy were to say,
Hay que hacer ejercicio.
So this means like you should exercise, but not you personally. It's more like one must or one should exercise. People must exercise. It's general. There's no subject. Whereas if we were to say,
Debes hacer ejercicio.
So we're personally advising or recommending that you should exercise. What about this one?
Hay que tener paciencia.
This is like you should have patience, but generally like one must have patience. Whereas
Debes tener paciencia.
is more like you should be patient. So now with these three, the key thing to remember is that hay que is general, it's impersonal, whereas deber and tener que are personal. But remember that deber is used for giving recommendations or advice and showing responsibility. It's not an unavoidable obligation like tener que.
Lastly, we have se supone que, meaning supposed to.
So although this one is not nearly as tricky, it still trips people up every once in a while. If you were to see these two expressions,
Se supone que llegas a las 9 and debes llegar a las 9.
how do we translate them? This one is, you're supposed to arrive at 9.
Se supone que llegas a las 9.
So this expresses an expectation. But what if we say, you should arrive at 9?
Debes llegar a las 9.
So this does not express an expectation like before with se supone que, but rather a piece of advice, a moral suggestion, or a sense of obligation. That's the difference.
And that's it. Don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel.
And check out the description for all of our links to that exclusive Spanish content. Also, big thank you to Mark White and Andy and Sue for your Buy Me a Coffee donation.
Now watch this video to keep improving your Spanish.
Until next time.